All right, folks, we are going to get started. Welcome to the Pacific Grove Middle School reopening town hall. I'm your proud principal, Sean Roach. I'm joined this evening by our assistant principal, Jason Tavani, as well as our director of facilities, Matt Kelly, who's going to add his expertise to a couple of slides. Our district nurse, Katrina Powley, who's going to add her expertise. And of course, running the show behind the scenes, Jonathan Mejia. Thank you very much, Mr. Mejia, for making this all work this evening. Before we begin, though, I'd like to acknowledge our faculty and our staff for their tireless work in connecting with and teaching students in a pandemic with empathy and grace in doing so. They have done an amazing job under completely crazy circumstances. And I'd also like to take a moment and acknowledge our students and families for persevering through this as well and remaining positive during tough times. I think it could be easily said that you are raising resilient students and you should be congratulated. So with that, on to the show. Next slide, please. So the purpose of our meeting, we have 4 things that we're going to be going over with you. We're going to describe our hybrid and our distance learning program to help you guys choose which instructional model is best for you and your family. We're going to explain some of the reopening factors. That will be brief. We are going to explain our COVID safety protocols in place here at Pacific Grove Middle School. Then we're going to open it up for questions at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. So originally this slide was a little bit longer than it is now, but we got some good news today. So grades 7 through 12 are permitted to open when California enters the red tier. Today's assignment for the Monterey County is a red tier. So we are officially a go at this point. Next slide, please. So we wanted to let you guys know what we were considering when we were planning this in-person instruction. Obviously, it all begins and ends with safety. The safety of your students, the safety of our staff is really the most important thing when we put this together. We wanted to also maintain as much continuity as possible throughout this transition. We understand that there's going to be a little bit of anxiety for those students who are going to come and join us, and some faculty members as well. And so what we wanted to do is to minimize all the other factors that could add to that stress. So we wanted to avoid re-rostering. If possible, we wanted to continue to use Google Classroom as the platform for our class assignments and materials and provide that continuity of learning. And we wanted to stick with the same bell schedule, the evens and the odds if possible. Something that is known to students, something that is known to us here. Eliminate as much of the kind of quick changes as we possibly can. And finally, we needed to develop a program and a schedule that can support both in-person and remote learning. So those are really the primary considerations that we factored in when we were creating this schedule. Next slide, please. So pending board approval, our current board approved secondary reopening date is April 19th. However, if the board approves an earlier reopening date, our recommendation is the following. We would like to recommend that on April 6th and 7th, teacher preparation day, and that student learning would be asynchronous for those days. April 8th and April 9th, we would host 6th grade only for training and orientation. Let's remember that these students have yet to set foot on campus, and I think it's important to give them some time to get to know the campus in and out. Now, during those times on the 8th and the 9th, the remainder of our students would be working from home on our new hybrid schedule. So they would actually get a little bit of training as well. April 19th, we'd like to dedicate that to, that's an asynchronous day, and we would continue our asynchronous Mondays with our advisory class. But in addition to that, we would like to host a new to PGMS orientation on site. We've had a number of students join us midstream this year who have not been on campus either. And those students may lie or fall in the 7th or 8th grade. And so we want to provide them with an opportunity to hit the ground running up here as well. So we would utilize that orientation on the 19th. On April 20th, we would host our 6th grade again, and we would include now our 7th grade for that day, and we would begin our training of our 7th grade cohort, who was with us 3/4 of a year before we went to shelter in place. And then finally, April 21st, all grade levels 6 through 8, we would train our 8th grade class. Now, our 8th grade class has a pretty good knowledge of where things are on campus, as they've joined us for quite some time. However, the training really results in how to negotiate this new COVID educational plan. And so that's where the training comes in for our 8th grade, okay? Our parent survey we sent out Wednesday, March 3rd. It is due back by Thursday, March 18th by 5 p.m. However, we would love it if it was sooner. That's my little bit of nagging for you guys this evening. If you need to change your response, please do email Mr. Tavani and we will take care of that for sure. Please complete 1 survey per child. So if you have multiple children, go ahead and do that a couple of times. And you'll be choosing between 2 options: in-person learning, which is our hybrid program, and full distance learning program, which is continuing distance learning. It is really our expectation and our wish that families will continue with their choice through the end of the year. We're really going to have to do a good job of balancing as best as possible. And we do have some safety factors that we need to continue to keep in mind. And so our ability to kind of switch back and forth is very, very limited at this time. So we would very much like you guys to continue with your choice throughout the end of the school year. Next, please. So our distance learning program, this is going to look very, very similar to what our students are doing currently. It's a continuation of our current instructional program. Students continue to do their learning from home via Google Classroom, utilizing Google Meets. Students access daily live instruction via Google Meets, daily live interaction with their teachers and their peers. Instruction will be computer-based. However, traditional learning methods may still be used, notebooks, journals. We have been delivering some materials to some classes so that you guys can be taking some of those things home and utilizing them in your classes. There will be a combination of synchronous, which is the live, and asynchronous instruction, so no changes there. Your teacher will remain the same. We are very confident that we can do this, and your teacher will remain the same. Students will be rostered in either an AM group or a PM group and follow the same schedule for that group. We are going to divide our distance learning students up into an AM and PM as well. And the reason for that is we would like to make sure that our student to teacher ratios are as low as possible. I think that's the best for learning, and I think that's the best for our teachers as well. However, all of our students with a first period PE, or a first period AVID, I believe that's AVID 7, will be rostered to the AM group. And the reason for that, obviously, is they will be on site and they will not have enough time to transition if they were to be assigned at home. So those groups will automatically be entered in our AM portion. So the in-person learning for the hybrid model, current classes will be split in half to accommodate our COVID safety guidelines for social distance. Students attend school in the AM or PM shifts. Campus and classes are set at 50% capacity. We are looking for an alphabetical split for AM, PM designation. And again, we're really going to need that survey to be mostly complete so that we're able to do that effectively and make sure that we adhere to the COVID safety guidelines. Students are going to attend 4 half days per week, either in the AM or PM. Mondays will continue to be asynchronous, with advisory class continuing from 10:10 to 10:45. The AM group attends school in the morning and will work asynchronously in the afternoon. The PM group attends school in the afternoon and will work asynchronously in the morning. Continuing on, students attend 3 classes per day, either their 246 or their 357. Instruction will be computer-based with slight modifications possible for in-person students. Students will be rostered in either the AM or the PM group and follow the schedule for that group. And all students with first period PE or AVID will be rostered to the AM group. What to expect? Well, this is going to be COVID education. In classrooms where we need to adhere to a myriad of different safety rules, it's really going to limit the amount of stuff. So we really need to think of this as an entirely new kind of blended learning. So it's not going to be as we remember education to be. COVID education will look similar, extremely similar, to our current distance learning model. Teachers and students will continue to utilize Google Classroom, various technologies which they've been using, Pear Deck, Edpuzzle, with the difference being that on-site students will physically be in their class with their teacher of record. This continuity of learning will ease the transition for both students and for teachers. For students on an IEP, special education students will receive pull-out services remotely, speech, occupational therapy, specialized academic instruction. However, our instructional aides will support special education students in the classroom as well as online for distance learning only students in both the AM and the PM groups. Chromebooks. So our plan for Chromebooks is to have our hybrid students return them to school if they have their own technology at home to use for asynchronous learning. Okay, that's a big if. Distance learning students will keep their Chromebooks at home to participate in the state testing. Students will not be transporting Chromebooks to and from school. They will not be transporting to and from school. Okay. Here's a look at our scaled down AM/PM model. Our Mondays will remain the same: teacher planning, advisory, distance learning. We do have a couple of additions to the Monday, which I'll get to when we get to our overall schedule look. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, AM, and our Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, PM. The school day will look a little bit like this. The AM group will start school at 8:30 in the morning. They will be dismissed at 11:30 a.m. 3 classes of 50 minutes each. Period 1 classes, PE and Avid 7, will be on site from 7:35 to 8:15, 2 days a week. So we'll be dividing that class up as well. For our PM group, they will start school at 12:30 p.m. and be dismissed at 3:30. We will have 3 classes for that group of 50 minutes each as well. Our choir and our period 8 jazz band are going to be virtual only, and they will be moved to our asynchronous Mondays. I'm going to let you guys just kind of take this in a little bit, but as you can see, there is some similarity between what we're doing right now. We've just literally cut this in half so that we can roster 50% safely for the AM and 50% safely for the PM portion. We have an hour at lunch for sanitation of classrooms. You can see that we have our jazz combo class, period 8, moved to Monday, as well as our choir class. Okay, Mr. Tavani. So our synchronous minutes will be 100 minutes per week, and 140 of those minutes will be asynchronous, leading to 240 minutes total, which is our state mandate. This applies to both in-person and full distance learning classes. So Mr. Tavani, if you would go back one slide, I can tell you what my middle school student will be doing. So let's say that student will be in the AM cohort. They will be on site for periods 2, 4, and 6 on Tuesday. And then they will work or complete their work, their asynchronous work, on periods 2, 4, and 6 on the PM of that day. That would give them 100 minutes per day of both synchronous and asynchronous learning. I find in my household that that schedule is absolutely essential to make sure that students stay on top of things and continue to stay up with their work. And then they always have Monday if they need a little bit of extra time. Okay, go ahead and progress 2 slides if you would. Lunch, so all students will be provided a grab and go lunch as they leave campus. This will be free of charge. For our AM students, they will eat their lunch on the same day. So as they are leaving at 11:30, they will grab their lunch and they will head on home. Our PM students will join us. They will go immediately to their classrooms. And at the end of their day, they will grab their lunch to take home for the following day. Again, lunches are at no cost to families. There will be no a la carte items available for obvious reasons. And students will wash their hands or use hand sanitizer before and after lunch, after they grab their lunch. Okay, Mr. Tavani, student drop off and pickup.
Right, yeah, so for student drop off, we just ask that you drop your student off no sooner than 15 minutes prior to the start of their school day. So for your first period student, that's pretty early. That's as early as 7:20. But for most students, that will be in that 8:15, after 8:15 range. We hope that works for everybody. That's just to minimize gathering, unsupervised gathering, perhaps. If they're here very early, we are not necessarily ready for them. And so ask that they don't show up prior to 15 minutes before their day starts. When they arrive, they should head directly to an assigned point of entry. You'll hear about this more in slides to come, but essentially that's a waiting area for them to be let into that particular part of the school building. Again, you'll hear more about that, but those campus entrances are assigned, and they are assigned because they're very close, they're quick access to the portion of campus that your student is going to. So entrances are attached to classrooms. Students also, at the end of the day, must leave campus immediately after their school day ends. Again, we want to be able to supervise and keep things safe as much as possible. And so we ask that students that are not attending school for that portion of the day take off and go on with their day and get busy with their asynchronous classwork. Upon arriving and waiting at their entrance, they will have a symptom check and have temperatures taken. Those won't be recorded, by the way. But for anyone with a fever greater than 100.4 degrees, that would mean a phone call. And we have a protocol for what would happen in that situation, which you'll hear about more later also. Throughout the day, we'll be monitoring students for following these safety protocols for social distancing and mask wearing mostly, as well as all the number of other things that we monitor students for at a middle school. Parents and visitors, unfortunately, in COVID school, will not be allowed on campus before, during, or after school. Our office is open, and we have protocols in place right now for students to drop things off or pick things up, and those processes will all continue. This is a map from above of our school site. You'll see that the stars represent entrances that are associated with a particular set of classrooms. So the blue area is the access point. The blue star is the entrance for students going to the music room or classrooms 10 through 13. The blue triangle is the exit. So this is to enable all of our hallways to be one way. And you'll see a little bit more about that also. But that, if you've been to the middle school and seen our hallways, they're tight, typically jam-packed with students accessing their lockers. We need to change that for COVID school. So we are going to be making all hallways one way. So this map just identifies all the entrance points, waiting areas, and exits for each of the classrooms that your students will be attending. So here is one of those assigned entrances. This is where students will wait to enter that doorway right there. You'll see that there's a sign above the door that's also pictured bottom right. Tells you what classrooms are accessible by that doorway. So students entering those classrooms would wait in this area. The orange markings on the ground right there are for us to know what 6 feet is, for students to know what 6 feet is, and allow for an easy prompt to get students to mind their social distance by simply asking that everybody put a foot on an orange dot, for example. Yeah. Restrooms, of course, restrooms will be accessible throughout the day. We will use the same restrooms that we've always used. However, we'll have particular stalls assigned to each grade level, simply to minimize contacts. Students will be allowed in the restroom 2 at a time during passing period, and they'll also be allowed to access restrooms during class, but that would require the teacher to notify the office that a student is being released to the bathroom. And that's just so that we have an idea how many students are out in the hallways, so that we can, be present if we believe there's many students out. So we'll be well aware of students' movement throughout the building throughout the day. Transportation, unfortunately at this time, busing is not available, as you may imagine. So families should plan on transporting students to school. Weather permitting, great idea in our small town to hop on the skateboard or the scooter or the bicycle and get ourselves to school. Of course, the exception to the no busing is that students on special education IEPs who have that required in their, who have transportation required in their IEPs, those services will all continue. All right, so we are going to review some of the safety procedures. These are all safety procedures that are outlined in our PGUSD COVID safety plan that is available on all of our websites. It is the district's master plan for safe schooling during this pandemic. So some of the things that we will be reviewing tonight on these slides are listed here: the wellness check, face coverings, hand washing, physical distancing, room cleaning. How does the airflow and HVAC system, how is that working? Sick students and COVID cases. What happens in the event we have a sick student? What happens in the event we have a COVID case? And because we are really, as we've heard for a year now, we're all in this together. And certainly as we're all coming into a school building, we are really in control of the safety of this building, but that's every one of us in control of the safety of this building. And so we will hold students accountable to follow the safety procedures. We will of course be gracious and coach them up when they need it, teach them when they don't know, and remind them when they forget. And only those students that are negligent about mask wearing and social distancing and such would ever be asked to return to distance learning as a result. But that is basically what it comes down to, because those students could be creating an unsafe environment here on campus. So as far as face coverings, of course, all students and staff must wear face coverings. We have lots of extra masks, and these masks are available for any student that comes without one, or a student who breaks theirs midday. Maybe the ear strap breaks, or maybe it's not comfortable and they just want a different one. That's fine. We're happy to provide those. We have small sizes and we have larger sizes. Face shields are encouraged. That's a great extra layer of protection. However, a face shield does not substitute for a mask. So if the student is wearing a face shield, they should also be wearing a mask and would be provided one if they do not have one. And again, we will be reminding students how to properly wear a mask throughout the next several weeks. Many of them know that now, and in fact, that's something that we could use your help from at home, is just reminding your students about the importance of them wearing their mask while at school. I know they get it, but again, these reminders are just really important and help us all stay as safe as possible. Hand washing. So we'll be washing hands or using hand sanitizer every time a student comes in or out of a classroom. So at every passing period, there will be hand sanitizer and washing stations available. We did have some very clever hand washing stations installed throughout campus that allow multiple students to access a singular water source by the clever design of this thing, which I'll show you in just a second. And we will remind students how to properly wash their hands. I do have a song that I like to sing when I wash my hands that I'll be sharing. Probably rather embarrassed as I do that, but that's all right. Here's one of those hand washing stations. As you can see, there's 4 kind of outlets for students to put their hands into, and there's a mister inside there that sprays water. Of course, there's a soap dispenser right there. You cannot see the towel dispenser, which is on the off to the right here of the picture. But this is one of our new hand washing stations that now takes the place of where a drinking fountain used to be. So a single drinking fountain turned into a place for 4 students to wash their hands. Physical distancing, of course, throughout the school day. Students and staff are to maintain 6 feet as much as practicable. Guidance does allow for proximity down to 4 feet if necessary. We, of course, want to keep as much space as possible, so we'll be encouraging the 6. All of our buildings and classrooms have been evaluated based on square footage, as well as teacher space in a classroom, for example, that wouldn't count in terms of space that's accessible to students. And so we've taken the remaining space outside of teachers' desk area, for example, and determined the maximum number of students that could fit in a classroom. And it's averaging more than 12, but 12 are some of our smaller classrooms. That allows students 46 feet of personal space, square feet rather, and students will be placed 6 feet apart. Staff, of course, are going to be supervising hallways, waiting areas during passing periods so that we can also remind students. They do forget, and that will be our responsibility to remind them. Here is one of our larger classrooms with tables. They have these trapezoid tables and of course, plenty of space there. You can see 12, well, you can see 11, but there are 12 desks in this classroom. It could accommodate more. This next classroom is one of our smaller ones, but again, it easily accommodates the 12 desks that we have placed in here, even as one of our smaller classrooms. Our hallways will all be one way during passing periods. So I'm in my second period class, the bell rings, and I come out of a classroom. Everyone in the hallways will be going in the same direction to exit the building. Okay, so during class, so in between, hallways are one way. During class, however, hallways are two way. So for example, there's a classroom down off to the left at the end of this hallway in the picture, and students exiting that class at the end of class will have to continue off to the right down this hallway here to exit the building. One-way hallways at passing periods. During class, however, if a student comes out of room 7 here on the left and needs to use the restroom, a boy, for example, the boys' restroom is just about 12 feet closer to us in this picture. So that student during class time, in an effort to get that student back to class as quickly as possible, that student will be able to use the hallway to walk down to the bathroom and then head straight back to class. Again, this is after a teacher makes a phone call to the office to let us know that a student is being released. So we will have a gauge as to how many students are out in the hallways during class, and we'll be able to make sure that there is ample space for students to move through the building during class times. Again, all students exit the building after each class. That just maintains that one-way flow. We are not using lockers this year or for the remainder of this school year. Probably obvious reasons you could imagine. And if you've ever seen it, it gets very crowded, and that's not going to work for the way we have to school for the remainder of the school year. So students will be able to bring their backpacks to and from classes. And so their cell phone should be tucked away in their backpack, and their learning instruments and tools and such in there as well, that they'll just carry that stuff from class to class. So let's put all these pictures together because I know it's a little confusing, but your student arrives at school and goes to their assigned point of entry. And so there's that picture in the upper left of the assigned point of entry. They then go to move up in line and have symptoms checked. They enter the one-way hallway, walk down the direction of all the arrows, obviously, and then kind of get off that little highway and into their physically distanced classroom. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Director of Maintenance and Operations, Matt Kelly, to talk with you about some of the specific details of cleaning and HVAC. Matt.
Thanks, Jason. So classrooms will be disinfected between the AM and PM session. We've purchased 2 electrostatic sprayers, and we'll just be disinfecting during that time, not cleaning. And we have about an hour to do that, and think that'll be plenty of time. Throughout the day, we'll be hitting high touch surface areas. They'll be getting wiped down by custodial staff. We'll also schedule at least 1 bathroom cleaning during the middle of the day. So there'll be 1 bathroom cleaning in the day, and then a bathroom cleaning in the evenings as well. Classrooms will have microfibers and hydrogen peroxide cleaner for any other additional cleaning that the teacher may need to do. And the reason that's not disinfecting is because we don't want our students being exposed to disinfectant in the classroom. We want them to be out of the classroom or out of the areas when we disinfect. And then again, the electrostatic sprayers will be there to disinfect classrooms and play structures if there are time. We do realize that some of the play structures are outside, and there is some the UV light will take care of a lot of the disinfection, the natural UV light of the disinfection of the play structures. And then we'll be putting in our nanotechnology, which is just a surface coating over everything. So any of those heavier droplets that fall into it, that nanotechnology can kill right on the surface right away. So teamed up with disinfecting, I feel like that's a really, really good system. All right, next slide. Our HVAC plan is to increase the flow of fresh air from the outdoor into the inside. Basically, what we want to do is we want to, as many times as we can in an hour, is flush out that inside air with fresh new air. And we do that by opening windows and creating a cross-air ventilation or cross-air movement. We also do by opening the doors and the HVAC and keep the HVAC fans on. So in between heating cycles, the fan will be running in all the classrooms. And so again, it's just to maximize our fresh air intakes. And then we're able to estimate our air changes an hour. We've been doing some testing on the rooms and with a 5-step guide that was given to us by a mechanical engineer. We were able to follow the steps and checking the ventilation in the rooms. And that study was done, or that test was done by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. And so we use the what's called the estimating the outdoor ventilation rate using the CO2 decay method. Next slide, please. This is where this is the graph they give us to measure that. 6 ACH means air changes an hour. 6 is ideal. The top says our target would be 5 air changes an hour, and that's based off of 28 students in a 1,000 square foot room, and they're saying 5 to 6 air changes a minute is ideal. And I'll share with you some of the results we got at the middle school. So next slide, please. So we tested room 6. It's a downstairs room, and we came up with 7.5 air changes an hour, which is in the ideal range. And we're actually going to go back and retest this room. And when we did it, we had all the windows open, we had all the doors open, but we didn't open all the hallway doors that lead out to the exterior, and feel like that we could probably increase that as well. But at 7.5, at least we know that if it's a really, really cold day, we can close some of those exterior doors and still have an ideal air changes per hour. Next slide for the next classroom. So we also tested room 25 and came out with 19.9 air changes an hour, which is fabulous. It's more than 3 times the highest level that the study gave us. And up there, we had a little bit more air movement. We were able to open up windows in the hallways to the exterior, which is why we want to go back and test the lower level again and try to increase those air changes an hour.
All right, thank you, Director Kelly. Nurse Powley, wellness checks.
Thank you so much, Principal Roach and Director Kelly and Mr. Tovani. So it's great to be here and to talk about some of our health procedures for when students come to school. So as Principal Roach talked about, students will come to a specific entry point and they will go through what's called a wellness check. They will get their temperature taken, and we will have just specific questions and items that we will review and go over with the students in terms of their overall health. And what we've found that works really well is to use an icon chart of different symbols that represent symptoms of illness, so that we can point to those. A student can either shake their head or nod their head if they're experiencing any symptoms. We also learn a lot by just looking at the student and asking them questions as well. So what we have infrared contactless thermometers that we use, and then we just go through our symptom check. Students are socially distanced, and then they if they pass the symptom check and they're fine, which is no illness symptoms, no high temperature if the temperature is within normal range. If they're not still recovering from an illness, then they move on to their class area. And so, as you can see, we're specifically looking for certain illness symptoms, such as headache, chills, cough, sore throat, congestion, which is not related to a previous illness or ongoing medical condition, such as allergy or asthma, a new loss of taste or smell, difficulty breathing, not related to any other medical conditions, such as asthma, muscle or body aches, stomach ache, diarrhea, or fatigue. So we're looking for particularly new symptoms. So if a student shows symptoms before coming to school, parents should keep the student home. That said, we know that some of our students have seasonal allergies. They may have other medical conditions, ongoing intestinal medical conditions that may mimic a contagious illness. If that's the case, we ask that you email the front office or just notify us and let us know, so that if they do complain of a stomach ache because they take medication in the morning, or if they have seasonal allergies that are triggered by pollen and warm weather, that we know that beforehand, and so then we just know what to expect when they come to school. All right, next slide, thank you. So in terms of if a student is experiencing illness symptoms, a health staff member will be contacted. So at each of our 4 schools, we have a full-time health staff. So I'm designated to the middle school full-time. My health aide, who normally covers the middle school and high school half days, she's at the high school full-time. And then we have 2 full-time health clerks at Forest Grove and Robert Downs. So we have a health staff member on site at all times while students are at school. So I would be notified if a student is ill. I would come evaluate with the teacher and determine more details. And then if the student needs to go home, then I would contact the parent for the student to be picked up. And so our illness policy is the student needs to stay home until no signs and symptoms of illness for at least 24 hours without the use of over-the-counter medication to relieve symptoms. So if a student had an elevated temperature, they would need to be fever-free for at least 24 hours without the use of ibuprofen or Tylenol. And so and then we ask families to monitor for signs and symptoms of illness at home. If a student should be experiencing illness past about a day or 2, then our recommendation is to consult the student's healthcare provider for further evaluation. And then again, just to reiterate, just to update their healthcare plan if they have any new medical conditions or new health conditions that we need to be made aware of, please contact us. So if we have a confirmed COVID-19 case, so if a student is diagnosed with a positive COVID-19 case, so I would be contacted. I would then contact the individual or then the family. I would determine their list of close contacts. We also have a check-in system called Facilitron that we use to also do contact tracing at timestamps when people are on campus and when they leave. So we use that list to find out when the person who tested positive was on campus and who might be a close contact or potential close contact. So we'll do that contact tracing. We can enlist the help of the health department as well. I'm often in contact with them for any questions or guidance. And so we would determine close contacts. We would contact those individuals and then give them instructions regarding quarantine and monitoring for signs and symptoms of illness. And so the exposed area of the person who was diagnosed with a positive COVID-19 diagnosis would be closed for 24 hours and disinfected before it was used again. And I would work with administrators, the site administrator, and anyone that needs to know, and a classroom teacher, another staff member. And we do take all information and keep it very confidential. So only those individuals that would need to know that were close contacts to an individual diagnosed with COVID-19 would be notified, and it would be me and the site administrator and our maintenance director as well for the purposes of disinfection. So we will all information is confidential. And then close contacts are notified and they're advised to quarantine for up to 14 days and to contact their healthcare provider, particularly if they experience illness symptoms. So the CDC guidelines did change in mid-August from 14 days to 10 days if a close contact to a positive case does not experience illness symptoms. So it's an anticipated 14 days if you're identified as a close contact to an individual who's diagnosed with COVID-19. So I should say that the definition of close contact is being within 6 feet for a total of 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. So if you were close to, or if an individual was in close contact to another individual diagnosed with COVID-19, according to those guidelines, 15 minutes within 6 feet, then they would be identified as a close contact, and we would work with those individuals. So the student who's diagnosed with COVID-19 would stay home. They would quarantine at least 14 days, possibly longer if they do have moderate to severe symptoms. And then they would consult with a healthcare provider and provide us a medical note for when they could return to school or that they have a clean bill of health. So I'm in close contact with any families or any individuals who've been diagnosed with any positive cases, and as they work with their healthcare provider. And so the student may return to school after meeting the criteria to end quarantine, and they are free of any illness symptoms for at least the 24-hour period without the use of over-the-counter medications to relieve symptoms. So, next.
Thank you very much, Nurse Pally. Thank you very much. We are absolutely ecstatic. I have learned so much from Nurse Pally. We have actually been hosting small cohorts of students since December. We have close to 50 kids on site right now. And I've learned a lot from Nurse Pally. It's very, it really has informed the choices that we've made, the steps that we've taken in our present schedule. And so it really takes a team effort. And I also have to give kudos to Director Kelly as far as all the work that he and his team have done to set it up, obviously for the small cohort of students, but also for our reopening plan. So that concludes our presentation for this evening. I know that's a lot of information to process. We are recording this, and we will put this up on the website for you to peruse at a later time. At this point, I'd like to invite some questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the reaction button to raise your hand. State your name if you would. We will try our best to get as many questions in as possible. So I think we can go ahead and undo the presentation. And we can go ahead.
All right, Mr. Roach, it took me a second to unmute myself. Looks like our first question is from Grace Platt.
Okay.
And Grace, oh, there you go. You're unmuted.
Hey guys, this isn't actually Grace. She was just the last one on Zoom. So this is Christopher Platt. Sorry if there's any noise. It's like the second dinner was served, it was question time. So good job on the plan. The logistical stuff of compliance is difficult. I understand that. I was a CPA and I did a lot of compliance type work. So I know trying to get in with government standards is difficult. So I have a couple of questions. First, this is just a minor one. It doesn't even have to be answered right now. It could be, later offline. A phone call to the office, is there a less disruptive way given Google Classroom that the teacher can click a button on their computer so they can do it fast without having to stop and call and everything? Because that is a pretty significant disruption to the class if they have to do that every time. So the 8th graders going to school last on April 21st. I would think that if you guys are allowed to open up tomorrow, I would think you should be open by like Monday. And so to set your goal, if they let you go to school, if they let all the kids go to school tomorrow, and you guys are setting the 21st as the goal for 8th graders, That is ridiculous. I would wonder what has been going on the whole time. Why aren't you ready to do it the second they will let you do it? Saying that safety was priority in creating the plan, safety from COVID only. There's a lot of other things going on that are affecting kids and hurting kids, and that is being completely ignored. So like I say, good job on the logistics, but to not start until that late is ridiculous.
Okay, next question, please.
Okay, Julie McCullough.
Ms. McCullough.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for putting together the town hall. I have to concur with Chris. I was on the high school town hall presentation last night, and I actually wondered the same thing about their delay until April 6th. But what they came up with was 9th grade orientation for the middle schoolers on March 30th and 31st, with the rest of the classes starting on April 6th. I thought this was a unified school district, and it's pretty disappointing to find out that these dates are so far out into April. The school, the whole district knew the red tier was coming. You guys talked about it on the board meeting last time, that it was probably going to be announced today. So I don't understand why there needs to be so much prep time at this point, why the classrooms aren't prepared, why the teachers aren't prepared. Can you explain why the middle school is starting so late when we've got other schools starting at the end of March?
Well, our preparations have been made for the classrooms, and we have not yet given teachers time to make those preparations. So there's a couple of responses right there. And we're really just going to let the Board of Trustees make the decision as to when the middle school opens up, and they'll be having that meeting this Thursday. Okay, next question, Mr. Tavani.
Next is Connor Chenoweth.
Connor, go ahead.
Oh, this is Sherry Chenoweth. Sorry about that. Took me a second to unmute.
Okay.
Just a couple quick things. I concur with, I do feel like April 21st is getting far out there. I do know that based on the way the last school board meetings have gone, they strongly rely upon what the teachers are asking for. And that's how it went last time for the elementary school. So if we ask for, later times, then they're probably going to go for that because they're taking the guidance from the teachers. So I'm just thinking maybe we should start off by asking for sooner and see where we can go rather than the goal still being so far out. Outside of that, question about how for people that are going out of the state for spring break, what that looks like. Do we need to notify the school now that we're going to be, quarantining when we get back, or what's that going to look like? Do you have any answers, or have you guys addressed with that specifically?
I'll invite Nurse Polly to answer that question. I know it is strongly recommended that families that travel out of state quarantine, but I'll go ahead and let Nurse Polly respond to that.
Sure. So the CDC guidelines were updated last week to indicate that if a individual travels out of state, it's not mandated but strongly recommended that when they return post-travel that they get tested for COVID 3 to 5 days after returning. And if they're negative, they would simply quarantine for 7 days total. If they're positive, then they would that would be to be determined if their COVID test is positive, how long they would quarantine. It would be 14 days, possibly longer if there's symptoms. If they don't elect to get tested, then the recommendation is up to 10 days quarantine. So that's the CDC. And this California Department of Health guidelines, the last update was January 6th of this year, which was a quarantine of up to 14 days for out-of-state travel or beyond 120 miles. So these are just strong recommendations, but they're not mandated or enforceable by law. So
if we're going back and we're trying to do things safest, if we let the school know that we're going to be going out of state, is the school then going to turn around and request that we quarantine, or what's that, I'm aware of the CDC guidelines and everything else, but how is that going to interface with the school?
So we would just refer you to the recommendations of the guidelines. We can't mandate it. We're focusing on the things that we have set up in terms of our safety plan. We have the masking, social distancing, disinfection, air ventilation. And so although families are not mandated, we recommend it, but again, it's up to the family's decision. But we do feel like we have set up our campuses to be very safe with all of the safety protocol and equipment and supplies that we have. So
that makes sense, that you're kind of planning for just in case, because we don't obviously know when anyone's going to be having contact. So I think that answers my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next up is Anne.
Go ahead, Anne.
Hi, sorry. Thank you for everything you guys have been doing. Just a quick question, or I have 2 questions. I'll start with one. Just my son, 6th grader, is wondering about how PE will be with the hybrid learning. Just becoming in as a 6th grader, the bottom of the totem pole, as far as what PE will look like in the hybrid period, whether or not we need to be getting the PE uniform and changing in that period of time when they have that PE class. My second question was, with the split schedules of if he's in either the lower tier of the AM class or the PM class in his, you guys said that you were staying with the same teachers throughout, that they would be getting the same lesson plan from the teacher in the morning, and then maybe finishing up work asynchronous in the afternoon or vice versa.
Yes.
If that's how the class was going to work, as far as either needing Chromebooks in the classroom to finish their work on a Pear Deck or an Ed Puzzle, or sorry.
Okay.
That's enough right now.
Okay, I appreciate it. Yeah, you, as far as the schedule is concerned, you nailed it. It's kind of an either or. Either you're on site, if you're a hybrid, you're on site and you're participating here, and then the asynchronous is the opposite end. So if you're on site in the AM, your asynchronous is going to be in the PM, and so on and so forth. As far as PE is concerned, we are not going to make students dress out. We're not going to do any of that stuff. First of all, it's far too small an area to have a bunch of students coming and sharing air. So we are going to have those students line up directly outside and be outside as much as possible. I think that PE lends itself naturally to be one of the safer things that you can do because it is an outdoor activity. And I want your 6th grader, I hope your 6th grader is listening. We are not going to do a 5-mile march or anything like that. It's really gonna be lowering that anxiety level, kind of seeing where they are physically and just getting the blood pumping. It's gonna be kind of akin to what we're doing after school right now with our conditioning groups. We're gonna get the blood pumping, we're gonna get a little bit of sweat and get kids up and off the couch and active. So tell them that that is really our intent, and you wouldn't need to worry about changing into any PE clothes or anything like that. Thanks for the question.
And yeah, and I'll just add, Mr. Roach, there that with that comes the need for comfortable clothing that a student could use during PE while they're doing stretches, while they're doing, a fitness workout. So keep that in mind. And then you touched on a question about the Chromebooks and the Chromebooks. Yes, a Chromebook will be needed for a student to access their in-person as well as their asynchronous work. And so, yes, we plan to have ample Chromebooks here on campus so that we have a class set for every classroom that students could use while they're here. There is no need to bring a Chromebook from home to school to finish the Pear Deck. They could just log in, it's all saved, and finish the Pear Deck that way. And then remember, there was a slide earlier on about students who are in the hybrid, that if they have a district issued Chromebook at home, well, they do, and if it's not being used, maybe you're using a Mac or you're using your own Chromebook or something like that. If it is not being used, we do ask that get returned to school so that we may put it to good use here in one of the classrooms that we have. And we'll be reminding everyone of these things regarding Chromebooks as well. So hope that answers your question there. Okay, next up is Eloisa Junquera.
Eloisa.
Hi there, everybody. A couple questions. I wasn't going to ask about this, but it just came up with Mr. Tovani. If my PGMS student has a sibling who's not using the Chromebook that was assigned to the sibling, wouldn't it be interesting to return those Chromebooks also? Like, is this just requesting that anyone returns the Chromebook that they're not using? And my other question is, sorry if I blinked when this was mentioned, but are the students going to be given clean, brand new surgical masks every day, or are they going to be allowed to wear homemade masks? And depending on your answer, then I have a comment.
I think as far as your Chromebook question is concerned, yes, if you have a Chromebook, it is not being used, I believe any site would be happy to get that Chromebook back, especially as we're getting closer towards hosting students back on site. As far as the masks are concerned, we do want our students to be able to bring masks to school. We will have a cadre of masks for broken masks or students who forget their masks, but I'm not sure that we have enough to really supply every student every day. So we encourage our students coming from home to bring their own mask. And did you have a follow-up?
Oh, she might have been muted.
Um,
Oh, there she is.
Yes, but might be long. So I'll just follow up through email. But for any parent that's interested, I'm just researching the literature on safe school return with homemade masks as opposed to surgical grade masks. But that's too long of an answer.
Okay, I appreciate it and look forward to the email.
Okay, next up is Masha. Hi, Masha.
Masha, hi.
Hello, I will, hold on, I will try to start the video. Sorry, I am in the car. Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mr. Tovani, for putting together this plan. I believe it was a team effort. It looks really fantabulous. Tomorrow is the board meeting, and how do we communicate to the board that really pushing the opening that far away is kind of really not very spirit lifting for the students and for the parents, because teachers to prepare, your teachers are ready. They've been teaching online. They have Mondays. You made a point that they will be using Google documents, that they will be using the, everything else. So they are ready. We just started hybrid at my work, and it was very scary. So as far as emotions go, I completely understand the teachers. It's absolutely terrifying, especially when you're in the class with a bunch of students and others are calling in. I know you're not doing it, but that's what we did. But it would be wonderful if, we could at least consider opening sooner, since you really sound like you're ready. Because the plan, everything else, you are so dialed in and, there.
I
So
appreciate
that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate the comment. And just for clarification, the board meeting is going to be on Thursday. And you obviously should attend the board meeting and make your voice heard. Thank you.
Okay, next up for the hands raised is Eric. Hello, Eric.
Hi, good evening. This is Eric Chamberlain, father of Emma from 7th grade. I just had two quick questions. First question, you mentioned that the AM and PM split would be organized by alphabetically. Is that, can we assume that's going to be from A until about the middle of the alphabet?
Yes.
M?
Yes, and Eric, it really kind of depends on how many students that we're going to be having as far as the hybrid on-site is concerned, because we really need to adhere to those safety protocols. So not to continue to beg, but that survey information is hugely important on finding where that cut point is going to land.
Understood. Thank you. And then second question, if our daughter somehow, gets a cold or can't make it to class because of an appointment, can she drop into the online class? If she's going to do the hybrid schedule, can she drop into the online class for like a day so that she's not marked absent?
I think that's a wonderful idea. Absolutely. And again, I highly encourage if anyone's children are sick, please keep them at home. Please keep them at home. That's a great idea.
Great, thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, next is a familiar name, Ishani.
Ishani, is
Hello.
that?
Oh
Hi.
yeah, I'm here. Hi.
There you go.
I'm actually an 8th grade student, for those of you who don't know, but I have a question. So would the kids who chose to do full distance learning, would they have also the like AM PM thing?
Good question, Ishani, and it's really good to talk to you. Yes, they would. They would have the AM PM designation as well. And the reason for that, Ishani, is because we want to make it as even as possible. It'll be easier for the teachers, and it's also better for the students. They'll have a better student to teacher ratio. So they will be divided as well. Good question, Ishani.
So will it be like online and be with half of our class, even if we're online, like fully distance learning?
You know, Ishani, I'm not sure how that's going to shake out right now. Our preliminary survey is about 75% of our families are opting for hybrid and 25% for distance learning. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. Each class will be a little bit different, but that's okay. We will adhere to the safety
All
net.
right, and I had another question. So we chose only hybrid, then would we have like the Chromebooks, would we be sharing them with someone who is in the AM or PM cohort? And like someone who's in the AM cohort, would they be sharing Chromebooks with someone in the PM cohort? Or would every student have like an individual Chromebook?
You know what? They would be, so what we've been doing since December is students have been cleaning their Chromebooks between each and every use. And so we have these sanitizing wipes that the students will use to wipe down the keyboard, wipe down their desk, and then return their laptop to the charging station. And so that's how we're going to do our transitions for the morning. And then at lunchtime, our wonderful custodial crew is going to be cleaning the classrooms for the PM cohort.
And those are alcohol-based wipes.
That's
They
correct.
are similar to a hand sanitizer.
That's correct. All right, thank you, Shani.
Okay, David.
David, hi.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my question. My son he's in the 7th grade, and he was wondering how the Chromebook in the classroom functions. Is it something where just occasionally the teacher's going to ask them, okay, now is the time to update your Pear Deck? Or he was concerned that they might actually just have to look at the screen like for video during the middle of the class. So I was just kind of curious. I didn't think that was the case, but I wanted to get clarification.
Right, well, and there's still, we're going to have to do a little bit of teacher planning on that. I think what we've seen, and we've actually tested this so far, we have several teachers on campus who are really kind of piloting how to do both the distance learning and the in-person learning. And there is, since we are kind of continuing on with the distance learning backbone to our instruction, a lot of it is going to be computer-based. So a lot of their breakout groups will be computer-based. A lot of their student responses will be computer-based. So there will be that specifically. Now, are they going to have to go through the microphone on their laptop to speak to the teacher in the room with them? No, that's not the case.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Thank you. Next up is Teresa. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi. Thank you for putting all the work into the airflow. That sounds really well thought out, and the one-way hallway. I have two things. I'm wondering, you have this check-in station when they arrive into school, and there are these icons that the nurse is going through. Have you thought of just using a Google form that each student would have to fill out in the morning, or the parent, to address those questions to get them into school faster, and so that you wouldn't have this bottleneck at the doorways trying to get them in? Second thing is, I, like many of the parents here, I'm really struggling with the fact that you're giving up 3 weeks of in-person education because you've had months to plan this, and the board has known it. The whole city has known that we were moving towards red. So we're giving up 3 weeks of in-person, or getting those kids on campus, getting them moving and connecting with their peers and getting their emotional health back, hopefully a little more regular. So why are we giving up those 3 weeks? Why are we not ready? And how do we make that happen?
Thank you. In regards to your first comment, the Google form, I think there would be a lot of kind of hoping and praying that all the parents would be able to fill out that form and get that to us, and that could create a bottleneck on its own. So we found the process to be fairly expedient. Once students understand the process, it actually goes quite quickly. Once you train students, and we've done this for all the small cohorts that we've had on site, they know what to do after a while. They will line up, they will stick their hand out, they will sanitize, they will go through their symptom checks. The temperature check takes but a moment, and then we can get them into class. And we've built our schedule such that there is enough time to process these students and get them into classrooms safely and efficiently. I also too want to kind of talk a little bit about the second comment. We are, all of our safety protocols, all of our PPE, all of our one-way, all of that stuff is ready to go at this point right now. I know that that the teachers will certainly need time to begin to lesson plan. For us, it's a really good amount of time for us to end our current unit of study, to really wrap our heads around how our distance learning and our in-person learning is going to work. But again, we're going to leave this up to the board. This is our recommendation right now based on what we think is the best way to ease or phase in many of our students here on site. Thank you.
Okay, next up it says M. Hill. If you could please tell us your first and last name, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, this is Myrna Hill. I'm Willow's mom. And I just want to say thank you for the April date. I am one of those parents who's really nervous about the return, and I appreciate the amount of time and effort that each one of you have taken to prepare for our students to be on campus. So thank you. April sounds fantastic to me and probably to other people, but I love the April date, and thank you for everyone. I do have a question about the nanotechnology. Exactly what is that process? I know it's probably a whole bunch of engineering complex concepts, but how often? I saw that it's going to last for 90 days. What exactly is that coding?
Wow, I'm going to defer to Director Kelly. Director Kelly.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, so it's basically it's not any type of disinfectant or chemical. It's basically a solution that settles onto the surface. It's almost like a protective coating that dries, and as viruses and mold and bacteria land on it, it's actually got like needles and points, and it punctures those viruses and needles and kills them on the spot. So it's not harmful at all to people or animals or anything else. Just basically because it's wet, and then it's not even in the wet stage is it dangerous, but it just basically dries on top of the surface. So hopefully that's yeah,
that's reassuring. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Next is Janelle. Hi, Janelle.
Hi, Janelle.
Hello. First of all, I wanted to thank you and your staff for keeping the parents informed, and all of your hard work. It is appreciated. I was wondering, I have some students at Forest Grove and one at the middle school, and I was wondering if the AM PM will be considered for all three to be on the same, or if it's not going to be synced through the school.
That's a great question, and I would love it if you would email myself and Principal Rogaman, and we can certainly come up with a plan to accommodate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you, Janelle. Next is Erica. Hi, Erica.
Hello. Thank you, Janelle. That was going to be my exact question. And also looking at the calendar, depending on whether the board does go through with an earlier date. I know that I've noticed that the 9th, the day before spring break, is a minimum day, and I want to know how hybrid schedules work for minimum days and what that would look like as far as scheduling and such.
That's a great question. And we do have a hybrid minimum day schedule that we would employ during that day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hope that answers your question there, Erica. Next is Eric.
Hello again. I had a question about technology at the school. I was wondering if there's infrastructure in place for our daughter to bring her laptop to school, her personal laptop, to plug into the network.
You know, Mr. Mejia, I'm not sure if you can comment on that. I think it is difficult or impossible for a personal device to connect to our secure network.
So our network is a secure network. So that kind of prohibits the use of a personal device in that way. Obviously, anything that's plugging into our network is also or could be a vulnerability to our network. We also want all the district policies and filters to apply, which they do at a network level, but what we really are kind of looking at is it is definitely a conversation that is kind of arising out of this new circumstance that we're in. Traditionally and historically, no students have not brought their own personal devices to plug into our network. It is something that we definitely need to speak about a little bit more as an admin team and find out which direction we're going to go in. But at the same time, too, we do have enough district devices that all students can get one of our new Chromebooks to use for their education, which is what we prefer from the sense of also managing, because if a student or a parent or a staff member even brought their own personal device, there's really no technical support we could perform on that device should they need it. And we want to be able to support students and staff. And that's one of the reasons why we kind of are moving towards standardizing technology, is so that we can continue to support them as needed.
Understood. I wasn't sure if there was infrastructure like an enterprise server or something like bring your own device ability at the school.
No, we do not. We do not have a enterprise server for that purpose.
Okay, just wasn't sure how long this is going to go on with the laptop at school. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Bonnie.
Bonnie.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify. So you want every parent that has children at multiple schools to email the principals of those schools?
Yes,
okay.
Please. Yes,
that
please.
sounds like a lot of emails. So I just wanted to clarify, because I also have a two middle schoolers and a kid at Forest Grove. And then will the students be bringing any supplies to school? And my other question is, do you see this month of hybrid learning that's planned as preparatory for the fall, or have you thought about what's going to happen in the fall? Do you have contingencies for back to school in August?
Okay, all good questions. Yes, I do look forward to meeting with the elementary principals to come up with a plan to make sure that we can accommodate you. Number one. Number two, students will not need to bring anything. We've bought extra paper, extra pencils, any of the consumables that we can provide them on campus, and stuff that they will not have to take from home, we think is beneficial. So we will have that information, or those materials here on site. And your last question was, do we see this as preparatory for August? Our intent right now is to open in August, regular schedule.
Great, thank you.
Certainly.
And just to follow up to Bonnie's question about bringing things to school, we do have some teachers, you guys may know which ones, but I know that some teachers require like a math journal or a scientific notebook or something like that. And so if that is a tool that teacher requires both synchronously and asynchronously, then that may be something that they want a student to bring to school to have during hybrid instruction. With our small groups that we've had on campus since December, that's a very small number of things, and it is limited to that exact thing, a math notebook, maybe a science notebook. And those have really been the only things that students have had to bring back and forth.
Okay.
And it looks like that's it for the raised hands at this moment.
I think so. Let's give it just a little bit more time. Well, I would like to thank you families for joining us this evening. I know this was quite a bit of information. Again, as I've said before, we are going to archive this on our website and the district website as well for you to peruse whenever you feel like it. Really appreciate the conversations and know that this is not the end. If you have anything additional that may come to mind, please do email myself or Mr. Tavani, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, thank you guys very much and have a great evening. Bye-bye.